House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer issuing several subpoenas last week into the Biden family's suspicious overseas business deals, including subpoenas to Hunter Biden, James Biden, and their business partner, Rob Walker. Chairman Comer broke the news exclusively on this program last week that his committee wants members of the Biden family to explain, among other questions, why two personal checks written by James and Sarah Biden to Joe Biden, totaling $240,000, were listed as loan repayment, when, in fact, the money came from overseas sources.
I don't think the average person can imagine how many different checking accounts the president's son had. And considering he didn't have a legitimate business, that in itself is an enormous red flag. So once all those come in, I think you're going to see swift action on Biden's. And I would predict somewhere around 24 subpoenas in the very near future.
In a statement to Fox News, Hunter Biden's attorney, Abby Lowell, said in part, quote, Hunter is eager to have the opportunity in a public forum and at the right time to discuss these matters with the committee. Joining me right now with more is Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who sits on both the Senate Foreign Relations and Senate Judiciary Committees. Senator Cruz has written a new book titled Unwoke: How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. It is available right now. Senator, thanks very much for joining us this morning. And I want to get to your book because I know what you write about in this book is exactly what we are all faced with right now, including that incredible story about your father, which we will get to in a moment. But first, I want to ask you about the evidence that you have seen. Do you have evidence that the DOJ is covering up crimes for Joe Biden?
Well, unfortunately, it is abundantly clear that the Biden Justice Department is covering for the White House, is doing everything they can to impede the investigation into Hunter Biden, but more significantly into Joe Biden. We have two IRS whistleblowers who've come forward. They've accused the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, of lying under oath to Congress. That's a felony. They've accused the Attorney General in the Department of Justice of obstruction of justice. One of the clearest examples is we have the text message that Hunter Biden sent to a Chinese communist official demanding millions of dollars and saying, I'm sitting next to my father. The investigators naturally wanted to get GPS data to confirm that Hunter was next to Joe Biden and that the retaliation that Hunter was threatening could happen. The Department of Justice said, no, you can't find out where Hunter was when he said that. You can't find out where Joe was when he said that. Look, David Weiss, the special prosecutor, has been prosecuting this for 5 years. At this point, Mr. Weiss is the slowest prosecutor on the face of the planet, and that's not an accident. He deliberately allowed the statute of limitations to expire on several of the worst criminal offenses Hunter Biden committed, in particular those dealing with millions of dollars from Burisma. And I think the reason he allowed them to expire is those dollars are directly tied to daddy, to President Joe Biden.
Unbelievable. Do you have evidence that Joe Biden made policy decisions based on events that he was actually paid for? For example, I have been questioning why this administration canceled the China initiative as soon as Joe Biden walked into the office. And I'm wondering if he was paid for that. I know the last chapter of your book is on China. Is some of this wokeness, this Marxism, coming from China? And what about that first question? Do you have evidence that he actually made policy decisions based on something he was paid for?
Well, listen, on the China piece, Joe Biden won't answer questions on that. So we don't have any information, and David Weiss and the Department of Justice seem desperately committed to avoiding any evidence being assembled. We do have evidence on Ukraine, and in particular that Joe Biden demanded the firing of the prosecutor in Ukraine that was investigating the corrupt oligarch who owns Burisma, and that he threatened to withhold and, in fact, did withhold over $1 billion in American loan guarantees until they fired that prosecutor. So when it comes to bribery, the essence of bribery is quid pro quo, this for that. We know that occurred. We know Biden demanded and received the firing of the prosecutor, so that much is direct evidence. We also know that Hunter and Joe, they had over 20 shell companies. They had multiple bank accounts. They had multiple fake. Joe Biden personally had multiple fake email accounts, multiple burner phones. None of that you do if you're not trying to hide something. At this point, on its face, this appears to be a serious and elaborate money laundering scheme. And on top of all of that, we know that Joe Biden personally received at least $240,000. They did write in the memo line loan repayment, but there's no evidence as to what loan they're talking about, and it just conveniently happened to come from sources overseas.
Unbelievable. Senator, I got to ask you, your book is important because it explains the Marxism thread that we've got ripping through this country, and it explains how we got here. My question to you is, how do we get out of it? What are the solutions here?
Well, look, that's really what the book is all about. The book explains how all of the major institutions in America have been seized by the radical left. It starts with universities. Universities, I call universities the Wuhan lab of the woke virus. It's where the virus was created, it's where it mutated, it's where it spread. Each chapter of the book goes to a different institution. So it goes from universities to K through 12 education, and from there to journalism, and from there to government, and from there to big business, from there to big tech, from there to entertainment, to Hollywood, movies, TV, music, sports, from there to science and the corruption and politicization of science. And then it ends, as you note, with China. And China is a central nexus intertwined with all of this. And what this book lays out is it, number one, explains how and why the radical left sees these institutions. I think a lot of Americans are wondering, how the heck did this happen? This is what the book explains. They did it from inside. But then critically, the book does exactly what you asked, Maria. In each chapter, it ends with how we fight back, and it lays out specific strategies for how to take the institutions back. So, for example, K through 12 education. K through 12 education, I talk about the corruption that we're seeing in our public schools, but I also talk about what happened in Loudoun County, Virginia, where a teenage girl tragically was sexually assaulted by a boy wearing a skirt in the girls' restroom. The school covered it up. They denied it happened. And in fact, they arrested the father of the victim, not the predator. But that sparked, as you know, moms across Virginia getting furious and not only winning school board elections. I'm endorsing in school board elections all across Texas, and parents are taking school boards back. Because what we need is transparency, we need sunlight, and then we need action. And so that's one of the strategies in terms of taking K through 12 back.
Senator, this war on Israel has sparked outrage as well as anti-Semitism across our country. I want to get your reaction to this.
This is the New York City Police Department. You are unlawfully in the roadway and obstructing vehicular traffic.
What an incredible development across America. We understand TikTok is part of the issue. And of course, Jews everywhere are afraid for their lives once again. Senator, how would you assess the White House's response, and what can you do about it as an elected official?
Well, listen, unfortunately, the White House's response has been terrible. At every stage, the White House and the State Department have been undermining Israel. They have been urging Israel literally from within minutes of when this horrific attack began on October 7th. The Biden White House has been telling Israel, do not retaliate, ceasefire, stop, do not kill the terrorists. My view is real simple. Israel is correct, absolutely justified in eliminating Hamas and killing the terrorists. And the Biden administration needs to stop giving billions of dollars to terrorists who want to murder us. Now, what we're seeing here at home, Maria, is heartbreaking. We're seeing this rabid anti-Semitism on college campuses. And I got to say, it's a manifestation of exactly what my new book, Unwoke, is all about. Because it explains cultural Marxism. You know, Karl Marx viewed the world as an inevitable conflict between oppressors and victims. And he put it in socioeconomic terms, the owners of capital versus the proletariat, the working men and women. And the solution Marx advocated is the violent revolution of the proletariat to forcibly overthrow the so-called oppressors and use government to redistribute the wealth. Well, I describe in the book on Woke how the Marxists in the 60s and 70s began infiltrating universities. It began mutating. And I got to say, there are a lot of just plain Jane liberals across the country that are wondering, why is the left right now between the squad and universities so viciously anti-Semitic? And the reason is, for the radical left, they have decided that Jews are the oppressors and Palestinians are the victims, which is why they support the violent revolution of the victims, even though, look, Hamas targeted civilians, raped and murdered women and children, and deliberately slaughtered infants.
Yeah. Senator, thank you for your work. We'll be watching that. And, of course, we're all wondering the same thing. Senator Ted Cruz joining us this morning in Texas. Thank you, sir.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.